Napoleon's attempt to be his uncle is the Crimean War, a war fought between the French and the British on one side and the Russians on the other. The Russians are attempting here to really pick up some warm water ports in the Black Sea and then use those positions to push deeper into the Mediterranean and push out into the Atlantic. If you're the English and the French, you can't have this. You can't have a Russian power that is a land-based power that also happens to have an enormous amount of navy power as well. So you have to shut this down. And eventually they do shut it down. The Crimean War from 1853 to 54 really ends the Russian desire to expand there for now. Obviously, if you fast forward to the future, those desires are still very much present. But what else does the war do? The war ends the concert of Europe. When the Austrians refuse to help the Russians, it breaks the solid 1-2 combination that had been the dominant force in European politics for conservatism up until that point in the 19th century. Now Russia and Austria go their separate ways. Okay? The French have their hero in Napoleon III. The English limp home to splendid isolationism. If you're Russia, you have problems. Big problems. You better figure out how to be a modern European power. Size and a massively cold winter is not going to win every battle, even if it wins most of them. Okay? You better figure it out. Flip the page, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk about Darwin in a later phase, so hold on to that. For now, let's talk about what's called realpolitik, the politics of reality. Cavour and Bismarck are masters at using planning in order to assure that their unification efforts take place. Now, going back to the Crimean War for a moment, none of this would be possible without the Crimean War. You have to have this moment where the concert is stripped away and people can challenge the old order. And that can only happen once the concert of Europe has been destroyed. In other words, if I'm planning an Italian unification movement, I need to be able to fight one country, not think, well, if I fight one country, I have to fight 10 of them. Okay, that can't be the way that it works. So, Cavour does a few things that are kind of smart. We talked about that in class. One of them was that he allied with the French in the Crimean War and therefore could rely on French support. Okay, he also, along the way, buddies up with another nationalist in Giuseppe Garibaldi. And thirdly, he stops Garibaldi from invading the Papal States, and by doing so, assures that the French don't intervene. At all three stages, Cavour is playing the world as it exists, not as it should be, not in an ideal sense. Yes, he has a game plan, but he's willing to adapt it. And that is the politics of reality. You have to be willing to kind of see the world as it is and to manage things. The ultimate master of that was Bismarck, who's a Prussian individual, but his goal is to take the Prussian state, join other German states onto it, and create this greater state of Germany. And he does that by fighting these three wars. Okay, let's really start with the Austro-Prussian War. The first war, the Danish War, is a setup war to get a conflict going eventually with the Austrians. In the Austro-Prussian War, Prussia surprises the Austrians. Austria is supposed to be a much stronger opponent, but the Prussians hit them fast and hit them very by surprise, and as a result of it, are able to win a war that most people think they're going to lose. Now, before he went to war, Bismarck went to the Russians. They're not going to do anything. He went to the French. He assured their isolation, if you will. He went to the English. They're not going anywhere. He went to the Italians, and he promised them land. You plan for these things. When the war is over, after the Austro-Prussian War, Bismarck is going to look at the Austrians and say, I'm not going to hurt you too much. I'm going to take some land. You lost, but fair shake. He needs their friendliness because the third war is coming down the road. He's got to go fight the French, and he needs Austria to sit on the sidelines for that war. So before he goes to war with the French, the Austrians have been isolated. The Russians aren't going anywhere. The English are where they are. We promised the Italians control of the Papal States when the French are defeated, and now I've got a one-on-one fight. That's the brilliance of Bismarck. How many people do you fight at the same time? You never fight more than one. You only ever fight when you're willing to fight. That's the politics of reality. That's playing the game the smart way. Now, in the midst of all of that conquest, there's this brief period called the Paris Commune, where a workers' rebellion rises up in Paris and looks like it's going to begin the socialist revolution. I got to imagine that Marx was dancing a jig in his apartment, but it all gets shut down, unfortunately. But it was there for a moment. We'll finish off here talking about this politics of reality in Hungary, where the Hungarians came back and after the Austro-Prussian War in 1867 forced Austria to grant them dual monarchy status. In other words, make them joint leaders of the empire. It's a great timing moment. What it does is it says to the Austrians, I know you're weak. You have to give me what I want, or I will stir up so much of a hornet's nest you'll regret it. It's brilliantly played, and it assures that the Austrians get, as I said, sort of joined together with the Hungarians here. Austria-Hungary from now on. Now, if you're Hungary, there's a downside to this. You just became part of the leadership in an empire that is completely volatile, right? You are now part of the group that controls this tiger by the tail. We're going to stop there. We'll finish up the second part of this by beginning with Tsar Alexander II. Take care.